Welcome to today's episode of Navigating Love and Immigration. I'm your host, attorney Megan Pastrana, and I'm excited because today I have a special guest with me, Tiffanie Powell. She's an estate planning attorney, and she is the CEO and founder of Tiffanie Powell and Associates. Her firm is located in the south suburbs of Chicago. She has a passion for helping people develop legacies and protect their assets. And I know you might be wondering, why would I have an estate planning attorney come on and be a guest? And I know estate planning is something we often avoid, but I have a little bit of an incentive for those of you who are going through an immigration process to really think about estate planning. And the first incentive that I have is that estate planning, having a will, can really be used as relationship evidence. I know couples are always asking me, what is the best relationship evidence? And a will is a really great type of evidence that can be used in your immigration case. So I hope that that's an incentive for you. But I think what's most important is exactly what Tiffanie dedicates her life to, is helping you to protect your legacy and your assets. And it's something that once you get married, to protect your spouse and your family and your children. So without further ado, Tiffanie, we are so excited to have you on today's show. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Megan. I really appreciate the opportunity.
It's wonderful to have you here. And I know you have, like I said, you have 21 years of experience. You absolutely love what you do. And it really shows. And you genuinely care about your clients. And I'd really like to dive in. You talk a lot about the benefits of estate planning. So as I mentioned, a lot of people tend to avoid estate planning, but let's go over some benefits to kind of get people motivated.
Awesome. As always, I believe estate planning is the most responsible thing that you can do to protect yourself and your loved ones in the event of disability or unfortunate death. Some of the benefits of estate planning are things that we think about in our everyday but may not fully appreciate. So I'll outline a few of them for you here now. Number one is control. Estate planning allows you to control who your property and assets will go to should you become disabled and or pass away. Control is huge for everyone because we work hard for the things that we have amassed during our life, and we want to make sure that we control who handles what when we're unable to do so. The second thing would be provision. Estate planning makes provision for your family. So in the event that you pass away, life insurance can be paid out and your family can be taken care of. There are different vehicles that we can use to determine how the money will get paid out, who it's going to be covering, and for what period of time. So estate planning helps with the provision. The other thing that estate planning can do is help you with charitable intentions. Sometimes we think of our spouses and our children as charities, right? We
Yeah,
can also
definitely.
consider all these colleges and universities that we go to, right? As well as our religious institutions that we may participate in and other organizations. Estate planning gives you an opportunity to create a legacy in a completely different way. And I think sometimes, Megan, we forget about that. We can really make some long-standing differences in the lives of others with some careful planning. One of the other benefits that I think some of us don't think about is fees. With an estate plan, you can minimize the type of professional services and fees that you will need upon death or disability because you've pretty much mapped out the plan. Everyone is going along with what you have. You've thought about taxes if you have a potentially taxable estate or not. You've managed all of that up front. Next would be privacy. In this day and age, everybody's on social media, everybody's sharing about their life, and you may not want everyone to know your business, right? So in doing an estate plan, you can manage privacy and make sure that only those intended get access to your more sensitive information. Last but definitely not least, I'll say taxes. I won't bore everybody with taxes today, but I will say that if your estate exceeds a certain amount, then it can be subjected to taxes. Estate planning can help you eliminate and or minimize the type of taxes that you may face upon your death. So those are just some of the benefits of estate planning that I often see in my practice.
Yeah, and I know that when we were talking recently, we were talking about the fees, that fourth thing that you mentioned. And I think that's a really great point, because a lot of couples, they're excited about starting their lives together. And that one of the top things I hear is they really want to do everything they can to protect their future and protect each other. So we're talking about an individual who has relocated, their spouse or fiance has relocated from another country, and they want to make sure that they're protected. So could you just tell a little bit more about what you mean by saving on fees? What would happen if somebody were to pass away without a will? What could happen to their spouse in terms of fees?
That's a great question. If you don't plan, then the state will plan for you. Here, I'm licensed in the state of Illinois, and we go by the Illinois Probate Act, and it has um, a specific way in which estates will be handled if someone passes away and they don't have an estate plan. Now, estate plan can go from being just a will to more complicated trust. But if you have nothing in place, then you go by what the Illinois legislature has determined as necessary. How that becomes harmful for you is that you get frozen out of all the assets. Your estate is everything that is left in your name upon your death. A lot of families will have a primary breadwinner. All the money may be in his or her name. And then upon their death, you get locked out of all the bank accounts. That's the most egregious lockout, right? Is locked out the bank accounts, the money that you need to pay the bills you no longer can have access to. So you don't want to leave it to chance, because if you do, then you have to go to probate, which can be costly for a lot of people, especially if they're entrepreneurs. Who's going to go to the bank and collect money off the business if you're the single member LLC? These are things that you could take into consideration with your estate planning.
Yeah, and that's a powerful thing. That knowledge is power for sure with that, because I know a lot of our couples, the individual who moves here, I mean, really for both of them, there's lots of periods of limbo in that immigration process. And really what I'm hearing from you is if someone were to pass away, be it the US citizen spouse, and then the immigrant spouse is there and they're locked out of bank accounts and things like that, and they've suffered from the death of their spouse, that's traumatic. And that would be a state of limbo. It is very egregious. So I'm really glad that you shared that with everyone.
Oh,
and I know you've alluded to this already, but did you have anything else to add on how estate planning can protect someone's spouse and children?
Well, estate planning is really good for making sure that your spouse is provided for. So going back to our example of, if you're a breadwinner, then you may have significant life insurance on your life, so that upon your passing, you would want that money to go to your spouse. But what if your spouse isn't used to handling money? What if the children that you want to leave this money to are minors? In those instances, you don't want to leave a $100,000 policy, for example, to a 3 and 4-year-old. A lot of people use life insurance to pay for final arrangements. You can't go get the money. And a 3 and 4-year-old is not the age of majority, or 18 years old, where they can actually receive the money, which will send you back to the courts through a guardianship proceeding so that you can get the authority to access the money on behalf of the children. The only issue with that option is the cost that's associated with it, as well as the fact that once the children turn 18, all money is released to them. And I don't know about you, Megan, but you give me $100,000 at 18, I can't promise anything nice is going to happen.
Yeah, because at that age, that's the saying that money grows on trees. You think you think $100,000 at 18, you think, oh, you could live forever on that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great example, because that's extra hoops to jump through. And yeah, the detriment of not having that will in place, that's really powerful.
It is.
Yeah. And I know we talked about this a little bit too. And I see the truth about DIY will preparation. And I know a lot of couples, and this, I want to be clear that this is not a judgment at all. Where we have YouTube University, and it's insane what you can learn how to do on your own. But it's really important to understand the risks of DIY will preparation. And I see a lot of couples who go online, a lot of clients we work with, and they want to protect their future, and they do these wills online, and then you can use it as relationship evidence. But sometimes I will let them know, I don't focus on estate planning, but I know that there are some flaws in here. So could you tell us a little bit about what are some of the things that can happen, the negative or the risks of DIY will preparation?
Yeah, the DIY, I enjoy it on some levels, but when it comes to legal, it becomes detrimental first and foremost because you may not realize it was done wrong until it's too late. So if you pass away and the will that you created yourself is ineffective or a court will not validate it and say that it's acceptable, then that's it. Now you're going back to what the statute says concerning your assets, who gets them, and in what share. So that's probably the most challenging part about it is that you don't know what's wrong until it's too late. The second part about it is you may have certain issues or circumstances that may need to be addressed in your estate planning documents. Earlier, we talked about children. For example, in the state of Illinois, you can leave guardianship provisions and name individuals who would be able to take care of your children or serve as guardians should you pass away. That guardianship provision would be named in your will. But if you did it online, you don't know that it's in there, or you could have put it in there, then that's missing. And that could cause an issue if there were competing interests for guardianship of your children. At least in your will, you could speak beyond the grave to say who you would and would not want to be taking care of your children. So it's things like that that you don't necessarily consider when you're preparing a will on your own. But why would you? You're not the estate planning professional. I have no expectation that you would know, and I don't fault you for trying to get your needs met and get things done. All I would say is I would encourage you to at least speak with a estate planning attorney to make sure that what you came up with was correct. And if not, at least be willing to create something that will meet your needs so that you won't experience problems at a time that will already be pretty stressful for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing as you were talking too about the reality that you won't know there's a mistake until you pass away, and that there really is no way to rectify. I mean, there's no way to rectify that outside of going through additional hoops. And the other thing I was thinking, I know a lot of people think, oh, estate planning is a will, but there's so many other parts. And I was actually thinking about the healthcare. It's escaping me. Healthcare
Power of attorney.
Power of attorney. Thank you. All I could think was healthcare, and my mind just drew a blank. But yeah, the power of attorney. And I've had a lot of couples that'll give me the will that they did from DIY online to use as evidence. And I always let them know estate planning is not my wheelhouse, but do you have that power of attorney? And so, could you speak a little bit about what that is and why that's important?
The healthcare power of attorney is really important because it affords you the opportunity to name an agent who can act on your behalf should you be unable to make healthcare decisions for yourself. It can be expanded to include organ donation, end of life care. You can even go so far to include language concerning whether you want to be buried or cremated. These are things that are very important because even if you consider just burial versus cremation, there are some spouses that are for cremation, the other may not be. But if you have a power of attorney for healthcare, then you can say what you want and no one has to feel bad about it. And even when you think about end of life care, no one wants to have that feeling of being the one to say, I pulled the plug on my spouse. If I have a healthcare power of attorney that says the length of my life, well, I should really say the quality of my life is more important than the length of my life, then if we get into a circumstance where I'm now brain dead, just to give us a more facetious example, I'm now brain dead, I'm not going to be coming back, then it's not hard for you to say goodbye and let me go. There's no way for us to fight over that. There's no litigation that can ensue because the hospitals say, does she have a healthcare power of attorney? What does it say? And in that, you then get guidance on how to best handle those issues. So that's really, really important to have a healthcare power of attorney.
Yeah, and that's powerful because I can't even imagine, being in that position. And if there wasn't a healthcare power of attorney in place, I mean, who's going to want to make that decision to have to end someone, in someone's life if they, like you said, that they're brain dead. And then the other thing probably too is all of those medical expenses will continue to accumulate. And yeah, I mean, that's a really difficult situation to be in. And so I like how you said giving that, giving your spouse that ability to just know your wishes and not have to even be thinking or making decisions in that moment outside of, just grieving that loss, because that's powerful.
But I agree. I agree that it's important to protect your family holistically, and that's even from themselves. Sometimes people don't have the opportunity or the appreciation for when life is beginning to cease, and they still keep fighting. They want to expend every asset, every dollar that you have to save a life that is transitioning now. And
Mhm.
so that also helps from a financial aspect as well, because you let your families know, hey, it's been fun, but when it's time for me to go, I want you to know that it's okay to let
Mhm.
me go. And I think that's great encouragement. I do.
Mhm.
I think that is the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, I do. I'm glad we talked about that. Yeah, that just came to my mind. And so thank you so much for sharing that
No
information.
problem.
And I think the one of the other things, I know you've talked about it, but I think like when we were just talking about being 18 and you feel like you're gonna live forever and all of that good stuff. But what age should individuals start estate planning?
18.
Yeah.
18. And I understand that estate planning will evolve as you get older, as you accumulate different assets. It's going to keep going forward. So you don't have to feel like it's a one and done type of scenario. As your life changes, then make the adjustment. It's okay. So I say 18. I think it's a great birthday gift to give them powers of attorney at a minimum, right? I would even say a simple will, because when they go away to college, if they're in an accident, and you run to the hospital, well, I'm their mama and I should do this, they'll be like, no, ma'am, you don't have access because you don't have a power of attorney to act on their behalf. We saw a lot of this with COVID happening. There were a lot of people who ran to hospitals and felt that they would automatically be granted access, and hospitals denied them. So it is a way that can assist you with your family and helping with your young people who are becoming young adults and moving forward. Give them the first glimpse of what it means to build a legacy by helping them to at least get powers of attorney for property and healthcare. So you can get to the banks where they just deposited all the money for school, and you can get access for that. So you can get into hospitals and assist them. And even if, God forbid, something happens, that there could be a simple will in place that says where they would want their assets to go should they pass away. So I just believe in being protected on all levels. So from the youngest of 18 to our seasoned folks out here, I think everyone should have an estate plan in place.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you so much for being with us again. I really appreciate it. And like I said, I know that estate planning is often something individuals avoid, but I hope as an incentive from an immigration standpoint that you think about it as a way to have evidence for your case, but more importantly, really just doing it to have that protect your assets and have that legacy and to protect your spouse and children. So I'm really grateful for you sharing your expertise here with us today. And I'm hopeful, I'm sure everybody got a lot of benefit out of this information. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so very much, Megan. I appreciate the time and the opportunity. I'm
Of
always here to
course.
help.
I even though this is a tough topic, somehow you and I always find a way to laugh and have fun. So I'm grateful for that. So
I'm
thanks so
glad
much
to. I'm
for
glad.
being here.